Okay, we are now live. Welcome, my students. Thanks for joining me today. I am very happy to introduce to you a fluency coach and an English teacher, Sarah Stanley. Thank you for joining us today, Sarah.
Thank you for having me here. Yeah, I'm really looking forward to our conversation.
Well, it's good to have you here. Well, let's get started. Let's find out more about you and what you do and where you're from. I understand that you were born in the UK, so we'll start with that.
Yeah, start from the beginning. So I was born in the UK and my father is English. It's actually got a bit of Welsh in him as well, so half Welsh, half English. And my mother is from the Caribbean, a tiny island called St. Kitts and Nevis. I don't know if you've heard of it, but it's a really beautiful island. And she came to the UK when she was 9 years old. So she spent most of her childhood and adult life in the UK. So yeah, half Caribbean, half English, and became a qualified primary school teacher. It's now going on for 18 years ago. And then I went on to teaching English. I don't know if you want me to fill in more than that, or there's a lot.
No, let's talk about your lessons back then when you were teaching English, and we'll work up to what you're doing today.
Yeah, so I started off teaching all the subjects because in primary here we have to teach all of the curriculum, and by teaching all of the subjects, it was a lot to get in, and also I didn't particularly enjoy teaching so many subjects and having like an hour to do maths, an hour to do English, an hour to do geography. And I always liked doing English because I have a degree in English language and literature. So yeah, I decided to go traveling after teaching for a few years, and I ended up in Australia, and I taught there in a kindergarten where there were some ESL students. So then I started thinking, oh, this is a bit more interesting because I can like focus a bit more on one subject. And then I moved on to Czech Republic, Prague. And I originally went there just as a visit, and I kind of fell in love with the city. And then I got a job as a proper English teacher, which I'd never done before. I'd only been teaching primary subjects and teaching English as a subject rather than as a language. And in Prague, that's where I really fell in love with teaching English. And that was because I could see that it's a lifelong skill rather than just something to pass a test, or you know what it's like, probably the same where you're from. In the school system here in the UK, it's all about target driven. The children don't always necessarily enjoy the subjects, where I found with English, I could just I captured something that I was able to teach that I enjoyed and the students enjoyed. And I was like, wow, I'm just going to grab hold of that then.
Great. Now you said primary school. Now for the students and other teachers don't know what age level that is. What are the ages that you taught?
So I've got experience from 4 years old, as young as that, all the way to 12-year-olds. So that was my children's kind of age. I do teach adults now, which is another side to it. But yeah, I really enjoy those ages, particularly because of the fact that they are kind of self-motivated to learn. It's not like with teenagers where you have to, prod them and bribe and stuff. And I think the most wonderful, I have a great memory of one of the schools I was at in Prague, where the children came to me aged, this was like a preschool. They came to me aged 4 years old, and some of them didn't speak any English. Their parents just believe them and go. And you feel like, oh my goodness, these, poor students. Well, because we made it fun and they enjoyed the environment, by the end of the year, some of them were like fluent. I mean, obviously they made mistakes and stuff, but and I was like, wow, isn't that amazing? Like that I have contributed that, lifelong gift to them. And then I was like, oh wow, this is too good. So I didn't want to return back to primary teaching. I just hooked in on English, really.
When you teach students that young, they pick up your accent. And I tell students that once you hit about 13, 14, the accent that you have is the accent that you have. And then it becomes harder to sound more like a native speaker. It's not impossible, but it does take a little more work in succeeding in that you're able to speak in a certain accent, a British accent, American accent. But when you're teaching children, especially starting at 4, I had a student who was 4.
Oh, really?
And she picked up my accent. And when I met her parents, I went to Taiwan to meet the family. And the father said to me, my daughter has your accent. And I said,
she's a mini you.
Yeah. She's 4. so she sounded like an American, and it sounded like she was from the States or had, been born in the States. And
wow.
Where her parents had a little bit of a Chinese accent.
Yeah.
Or Taiwanese accent. And she just, spoke the way I taught her.
Wow. That's amazing. You feel like a bit flattered, kind of like, because, and again, as children, they imitate you, don't they? So it's imitation. I mean, I've got a 3-year-old, and everything I do, she wants to be the same as me. So it's the same with our students, that if they like you, they naturally speak the way you speak as well. So as children. So yeah, that's really cool story, actually, that and like now we figure out why she speaks like this.
Yeah.
But yeah, my students, they had a lot of I guess in Czech Republic, they aim more for the British accent, but I experienced, especially with that age, if they've watched quite a bit of TV, it tends to be American. So there was a bit of a mixture of like, some of them were cute with a little American twang and American half British kind of mix.
Now, you say that you're a fluency coach, and I have a question for you. When your students say something with an American accent, like let's say garage, I say garage, you say garage, right?
Garage.
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 Yeah. And I say garage. Do you correct the student, or how do you handle that? If they're saying it, if they're learning from you and you're their fluency coach, do you correct them?
Well, I've actually had a bit of a gap now in my career, because I was teaching for 7 years in Czech Republic. Then I came back to the UK, and I then started doing online. Some of the people that I was making connections with in Prague asked me to continue. So the first time I did that, I was like, Skype online with children, this is just going to be terrible, weird. And then once you start doing it, you're like, well, it's obviously very, very different, but you can make it work if you have the right resources. And I think you obviously have to be even more enthusiastic, because people are like, oh, you just sit at home and teach children, that's easy. I'm like, you have to be even more enthusiastic, passionate to get it, your message across to someone's screen. So I began to do those kind of lessons. And then I had my daughter, and I've actually only recently gone back. So now I have named myself as a fluency coach, because I've decided to teach adults more now, pronunciation, rather than children. I loved teaching the children, but I just found, because I have a daughter myself, my energy levels are taken up so much time being a stay-at-home mum that I only have enough energy for one child. So that's why I'm actually teaching adults now. But your question about correction would be the same with children or adults, that I wouldn't correct that, because I had a realization only recently, actually, that was whole accent thing of what is our aim, as teachers? It's communication and to be understood. And this whole like accent reduction and sound like a native speaker, you see it all over like YouTube. And I suddenly realized that I don't want to promote that anymore. That I really think it's better to concentrate on communication. And obviously pronunciation is different, because if you pronounce something in the wrong way, you can be misunderstood. But accent has an accent and you're still understood, then that's amazing. And it's diversity, and it empowers the student as well, that, you know, they don't have to sound like us British or American, you know. So right. That's how I view it.
And I think that's a good way to strive to speak in a way that native speakers understand you, versus exactly. Trying to sound like an American or sound British or Australian. But I do have, on occasion, students who want to learn the Southern accent in the US.
Oh, really? Wow. Because it does sound lovely. And I love the American accent. I think it's like when you're from somewhere else, you just want to take it on. But so which kind of students want to learn Southern? Just they've heard it on TV, or?
Well, it's on TV, or I don't know where they're hearing it. But just recently, a student from Beijing who's just turned 13 has been asking me all kinds of questions about Southern accent. And he'll read something to me and try to read it in a Southern accent and ask me if it sounds Southern.
That's so funny, isn't it? How they are like, but realizing that accents are so rich, and maybe I was reading the other day about the future of English language learning and teaching, and they did mention about communication, you know, as being key, which I think maybe has been lacking for some time. That a lot of people, and I know there is this bias, especially maybe in Asian countries, where they want to get rid of their accent. But I think as teachers, if we have at the forefront of our minds communication is like, this is the thing it's about, then we can help, you know, the students embrace their accents.
That's true. Now, you mentioned earlier that you do teach adult students. Tell me a little bit about those classes and what you teach with them.
So this has only been recently. I did teach a few parents, which I find happens often when you are teaching children somewhere. The parents sometimes, you know, they think you're a good teacher and they want you to teach them too. So I have had experience of that in Czech Republic. And then recently I decided to promote myself as a teacher of adults. My students now, I only have 4 students because I'm still at home with my daughter most of the time. So I'm kind of just like building things up slowly. And my students mainly are concentrating on pronunciation. So they're all advanced level, which again is different for me. And it's just, I think it's as well, like as teachers, it's just nice to try sometimes different things in one field. There's so many aspects to teaching English. And I'm quite musical, and I just found like the pronunciation side of things and like the physical side of pronunciation so interesting. And so that's what I've been doing with my students, and I really enjoy it at the moment.
Well, I was going to ask you, do you play the piano that's behind you there?
Yeah.
It's an actual piano.
Yeah, I play and I sing as well. And it's, I mean, obviously you don't have to be musical to teach pronunciation, but it just really interested me, like I think as English teachers, the pronunciation part is not always, I didn't really look at it with the children, to be honest, because they were such little mimics anyway. Pick up, like you say, they just pick up, which is so lovely, that way of teaching immersion, you know, full immersion, and they just come out. Obviously the brain development is different at that age, and adults are a lot different, and they're so much more aware of their mistakes, which can get in the way of them learning. So yeah, this is the thing it's just very new, but very, very fun for me, is pronunciation. Yeah.
Well, I won't ask you to play anything, but maybe Britain's Got Talent?
No.
No. Are you sure?
Yeah, actually, yeah. I used to watch all of those. I used to watch it, but it just gets to the point. I think it's like everything with these series that the first ones are always good, like the Big Brother and the first series are kind of original and like it's looking at human psychology and stuff. But then as they go down the line, it's just fame, isn't it? And yeah, and it's a bit scripted. So yeah, not for me.
Well, we don't have a TV. I haven't had a TV since I'd say 1998.
Wow, that's good.
Yeah. We have internet now. You have everything. We have Disney Plus and HBO, and we have everything online.
You can stream whatever you want, can't you? That's
so there's no point to having a television. I told people when they would ask me, "Where's your TV?" I said, "Well, I lost the remote, so I had to sell my TV."
Yeah, it's like I think now it's becoming more mainstream not to have one, but I'm the same as you. Mine was simply because I was a poor teacher when I first got to Prague, and I just like didn't want to invest in the satellite to get the British programs and stuff, so I just didn't have it. And then you get used to it, and then as years it's like, who needs one? You have a laptop. You're more intentional then, aren't you, about what you're viewing? Because yeah, we have a joke in our family, like my grandma go around to the house, you go to see her after not seeing her for like, a couple of weeks and catch up, and the TV is always on. Even when we're having a conversation, it's always on in the background. You're like, it just becomes like a thing. So
background noise.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
All right, getting back to classes. Are you pro-grammar book or anti-grammar book?
That's a good question. And I think experience with the children, I really dislike prescriptive grammar. With the children, it was always things came up naturally. And if I had direct teaching, we did a lot of theme-based learning. So you know what it's like with students when they're, especially children, if they're interested in it, you could do the same lesson but on like a slightly different side topic each week, and they're going to be interested. So if they can learn the language through something that is relevant to them, then for me, I never taught children specific grammar. So I was very nervous with the adults, thinking I'm going to have to go away and read all of these grammar books. But I actually found that it was a similar kind of way of teaching, that they wanted things that are relevant to them. So I have one student, she's a CEO for a huge company, but she wants to talk about, she's very interested in psychology and human development. So we get articles, and of course grammar comes up, but it comes up naturally. So then she might ask me a question, and then I'll stop and explain the grammar rules. But most of the time, the correction and the learning takes place naturally rather than prescribed grammar. So I'm a bit of a anti-grammarist.
Anti-grammar.
Yeah.
For against grammar books.
Well, it's I've had so many discussions, especially in Prague, about this with teachers, because some of my colleagues did teach grammar from the books, and in Czech Republic, the mainstream school, because I taught in a lot of private schools, but the normal schools, it is very much learning everything from the book. But I think once people could see the results that they learn when they're interested, I never had a problem with parents, complaining or anything. I think they just wanted them to learn. So yeah, obviously grammar is really important, and it's I heard a really good description, somebody on YouTube, and I really want to say who it is, because it's not their idea, but it's not my idea. And they said that learning a language is, you have your popsicle sticks,
right?
Lollipop sticks. Lollipop stick. So you get your lolly sticks, and its language is like a house, and the lollipop sticks are the vocabulary, and the glue is the grammar. So to make something well and a good structure, you need both. But you can still build something with just lollipop sticks. It's not going to be super stable, but you can still build something. So I think that's a really good analogy for grammar and vocabulary. So yeah.
Good. I think that it's important, especially when you're teaching children, to, like you said, to keep them interested by doing things that they're interested in. And
Yeah.
I think games is a good way to do
Yeah.
that. Do you play games, and what kind of games do you play in your classes?
So yeah, I found lots of great online games. The British Council, again, it's tricky because some countries obviously block certain websites, or you're not allowed to access them, but the British Council have some really good games. So we used to use one called Word Shake. I don't know if you've heard of that, but just like a row of words, and they have to try and find their own ones and come up with words from the square. And yeah, hangman, but in all different ways of hangman with superheroes, hangman with princesses, whatever they're into. So yeah, games, a lot of games. But then sometimes I used to find that, especially in the early days when I didn't have Zoom, it was Skype. Sometimes the online distraction, and because they're used to playing a lot of online games anyway, I found even just having something next to me, like showing them an item, or I'd close my eyes and they'd have to describe to me an item that they had on their hand, or these kind of things. So you can still be a bit more like tactile, because you can have like obviously online burnout where you're like, I do want to do another online game, or just real life. Yeah. But yeah,
I do a lot of screen share when it comes to games. We play Roblox.
Oh
and
yeah.
I become the human mouse, and they have to say where to go, right,
Oh,
left,
brilliant.
straight, and then we talk about what's ever happening in the game, and like for example, Adopt Me has little characters and little, they have a pet, different types of pets, and you can dress them up, and you can get a new house, and you can do all sorts of things. And
Yeah.
it's fun because they get to tell you what they want, and you, like I said, are the human mouse. You're okay, we're going to go this way, that way.
It's great for speaking, that, isn't it? Like if you struggle to get them to speak, they've got to. So it's just full on instructional conversation. Yeah. That's it. Games. Games,
and they're focused. The focus is amazing.
Yeah. That's the other thing, isn't it? It's I think it's probably even more difficult now because I haven't taught children online for now 4 years. But back then, even I found sometimes I could see their eyes diverting, and they're just saying, yeah. And I'm like, are you playing a game while I'm
yes.
And they're like, oh,
that's right.
So
what are you doing?
Yeah, you could just tell, can't you? I'm like, you're on some kind of website. I can see you're not with me. And obviously that's really the tricky part of teaching children. They're self-motivated sometimes, but not so self-disciplined, maybe. Yeah, if the parents are in the background, then that was always a bit better. And a few students, I had to ask the parents, like, would you mind just being around for a few of the lessons? Because they're kind of like not, doing what they're supposed to do. So, yeah.
my students, their parents record the lesson.
Oh, wow.
They can watch the lesson and say,
that's good idea.
See what they're doing. They can see what they're doing in the lesson. And I don't want the parents in when I'm teaching, because I get a lot of this. Chamise.
Oh no.
In Chinese, what's that?
Exactly. Or like, listen, or that's it's definitely ideal situation is not having them there for sure. because parents being parents, they can't help themselves. But this is a really good idea actually to record. And I think back in the day with Skype, I can't even remember. Everything is getting easier now, isn't it? Like since COVID, obviously, being able to Zoom is just, I find it better than Skype. So being able to record it is a great idea.
I've been doing Zoom way before it became popular.
Oh, really?
And when I first started, people would tell me, "Oh, who wants to teach online? How can you? I could never do that." And now with the pandemic, everyone's like, "Oh, Zoom this and Zoom that."
Told you. I've been doing that for years. Yeah, it's definitely during the COVID, quite a few people reached out to me to say, like, I just didn't know how to even start. And it's like everything, once you get into it and start it, it's just finding different ways. And I think I do miss teaching face-to-face. When you've got a whole group of children, it's a very different energy. I don't miss traveling to people's houses, or obviously that's all part of, when you look at your time management and then your salary and everything, it's a very effective way to teach online. Efficient, yeah.
It's a little tricky to get used to if you've never done it before. It's a little trial and error at times, but once you get used to it, I've done group lessons online. I prefer one-on-one lessons because they're way easier. But if you can learn how to manage the time and give students a chance to talk.
This is the thing that I found recently is because I was considering, I do prefer one-to-one, but I was considering groups. So I did a free Zoom session for adults, and it was, because it was free, it gave me a chance to kind of experiment a bit as well with the rooms and how to coordinate people talking with a lag, which is honestly a pain, a real pain. But yeah, it's doable. It's just you have to like everything, you have to practice. And do
you have a preference? Do you have a preference, online or in person? Which one do you prefer?
To be honest, in an ideal world, if I could just go over the road and teach my neighbour, then that would be wonderful, face to face. Nothing beats like the face to face body language. But with a small child and the part of life that I'm at now, and just being able to reach more, people, it's just, I'm based now back in England. I've been back here for, I want to say 6 years now. Yeah. So yeah, I think a mixture of both would be perfect.
I haven't been in a classroom for a long time. I've been teaching online since like 2008.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
So I started with a company and I worked for a couple different online companies. And then in 2010, I went on my own. And I think if I went into a classroom now, I would feel very nervous. Maybe even uncomfortable in the beginning. It would be.
Yeah, it's different. I mean, you've got to make sure you're wearing trousers, of course.
You have to get dressed up.
Yeah, exactly. You have to wear some pants, they say in America, trousers in England. You have to wear your pants and you have to drive somewhere or get public transport. So there is that. And yeah, I think it's nice to be able to do both, and also to be able to reach people that wouldn't normally even be able to reach. I mean, some of my students, because they are business people, they wouldn't have the time to travel to me, and for them, they just need a short, snappy online task, so that suits them and me.
And once they realize that they can do it from their office or from home, they're in their own environment. They can have a cup of coffee, or they don't have to do anything themselves. They turn on the computer, class, done, you're home.
Exactly.
And I think I'm a little spoiled teaching online for so many years. Oh, it's so nice not having to wait for a bus or ride my bike or
Yeah, and it's like since COVID, I think as well, people are really working from home more, and just for me, especially being a mum, I feel like time is precious, and you do if you spend the time doing something that is really good and affect, what it's like when you've had a really good lesson, you feel like there was a light bulb moment, and you're like you have a good rapport, and then you can drink your coffee and go in your garden, or tidy your house. It's a great feeling to know that you can combine, two together.
Yeah. Now, when you're working with your adult students, is your focus on business English or conversational English?
The focus is mainly on pronunciation, and I always ask them before we start giving like a questionnaire of what are their interests. So most of them actually, we do touch on business, but it's not so much like vocabulary, very specific vocabulary related to their job, but more like general. We had a really good conversation with one of my Czech students just this last week about leadership skills and qualities. And so it's conversational, but it's very much listening to their pronunciation. And I wasn't sure how to go about that initially, because obviously when you're having a flow of conversation, especially with advanced learners, there's always that kind of nervousness of like interrupting, oh, can I stop you there on every. So I've had to work ways around that, how to. I found that WhatsApp homework has been really, really useful. So each of my students every week, they have an article to read out online on a WhatsApp audio message to me. And then they answer questions, and then they have a bit of a free flow about their thoughts about the article. So it's not just obviously reading, it's also free conversation, because when they're reading the article, often the pronunciation is great, perfect. And then once they free flow, that's where I can hear the errors. And that's so useful for me, because then I can use that, between the lessons. And then the following lesson I do feedback on what I heard. And because they can hear it back themselves, I'm like, oh yeah. And so, yeah, that's been really, really useful tool as well.
Yeah, I always tell my students, record yourself so you can connect your mouth to your brain. I don't know why. When I was studying Chinese, I thought, wow, my Chinese is so good. But
Wow.
I went to someone's house and I kept saying, your shit smells really good. This tastes good. This shit tastes good. And I meant to say food. I meant to say the word, your food tastes good. I love your food, but it wasn't food. I was saying the wrong word. So if you listen to yourself speaking in that language, you can hear the mistakes. You can hear the grammar mistakes, because a lot of students, when they speak, they don't hear it. And if you record yourself, you can say, because when they write or they take a test, they can fill in the blank,
exactly.
They can circle the right word. But record
this is
yourself.
definitely something that I've found with the advanced levels, and it's something that I wanted to kind of target, that people have been learning English for maybe 20 years and then got to this plateau of advanced level, and they cannot hear their own pronunciation mistakes.
Right.
It's just the way out, like you say, the brain-mouth disconnect. So I really wanted to pinpoint that with people, and I find that this is the nicest part of teaching in this way, is that when there's a light bulb moment, like, oh my goodness, I've been saying that. For example, in Czech, the word robot, it's actually, I don't know if you know this, but it's actually a Czech word. It was invented by a Czech author, the word robot. But they say robot with the rolled R and the short sound. And one of my students, I heard that in the WhatsApp audio, pointed it out to her, and she's like, oh my goodness. And that explains why when I say photograph rather than photograph, and it just a little light bulb moment of something very simple, but for her, now she's got it there. It doesn't mean she will say it correctly, but she knows. And I think the thing with pronunciation is recognizing your mistakes, which is really, really difficult to do. So yeah, it's been really enjoyable when I had to pick out those little.
Well, if they hear themselves make the mistake, then you'll start seeing them make their own corrections. And when I have a
Yeah.
student making their own corrections, then I think, yay, I've done
Oh,
my
that's the
job.
best. Yeah, because this is a thing, and I think this is from, like, maybe it's working with children, you have more of this feeling that it's about them being able to learn for themselves is the key, isn't it? Right. Communication number one, and then, well, maybe jointly, is that I don't want to have lifelong students. Like, it'll be nice because to have the money from, the salary, and if you get on well then, but, and the end game is that you are giving them skills where they can self-learn, and self-correct, and even like self-motivate, because I think that's also something that with adults, if they've been learning for years, is how do I motivate myself when I don't use English at home? I live in a country where there's not many English speakers. How do I motivate myself? So,
right. I would say try to speak English as often as possible, even if you're talking to yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, definitely. Self-talk. I think in English, yes.
Well, we've come to the point where I'm going to ask you 10 questions. And the first question is, what's your favorite word in English?
My favorite word is the word grace, because it's my daughter's name, and also I just think it encompasses a lot of good stuff that is maybe problematic with the world. If we all gave each other more grace, and I just think it's a really good quality.
And Grace is such a pretty name.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, it also sounds lovely, that's important too. The meaning and the sound, I really like that, yeah.
What's your least favorite word in English?
It was hard to think about this, and I was feeling like it's a sometimes yucky word. So mine is spleen, which is really random.
Spleen.
Spleen. It's really random. Years ago, I heard somebody had spleen removed, and I was like, whoa. And I think anything to do with the inner body, and yeah, I don't even know exactly what it does. I know that you can have it removed and you can still live without it, and it's somewhere in your ribs. But just the word spleen, it just makes me shiver.
Spleen.
Yeah.
Okay. That's a new one. What makes you happy?
For me, I was thinking that I obviously love my family, and I love friends and teaching, but if I'm in a really bad mood, the thing that makes me happy is nature. I just love the natural world. So I'm into hiking, and as a family we go out whenever we can to mountains or the coast. And yeah, just I've got into gardening a lot recently as well. So just being able to like see the intricacies of a flower, and then on the other scale, like the grandeur of mountains, it's just kind of mind-blowing. For me, it's like nature.
You mentioned that you lived in Prague. I also lived in Prague for about 4 years.
Oh, wow.
And Prague 6.
I lived in Davidska.
Did you? Okay. And for those that don't know, Prague is divided into different parts. So people will say, I'm from Prague 3 or Prague 6. I forgot, was it 12? Is it 12 different parts?
Up to 12, yeah. But the 12 is like so far out on the metro that I can't even remember. But yeah, but 6 is I know 6 really well, because a lot of my students were there, my schools were there yeah.
You did a lot of hiking in the woods there.
Yeah.
Prague 6. They have a big with about history of it. And anyway.
Yeah, the Stromovka Park is one of them. That was they had gorgeous parks, and me, that kind of fulfilled my nature fix, because a lot of Czechs are really outdoorsy, aren't they? So
yeah. And I have 2 dogs, and I would take them to the park all the time. People love dogs there.
Yes, they are crazy about dogs there. Very dog-friendly place. Yeah.
I loved it. Yeah.
Yeah, Prague is a really nice place to be.
So what makes you angry?
I was thinking again, it's just being tired everything makes me angry when I'm tired. I can be a lot more calm and rational about things, many things, when I'm not tired. But yeah, that's I can feel more like on edge and irritated. Yeah, when I'm tired.
What is your favorite onomatopoeia?
I was thinking, and actually, I don't know if you heard of ASMR, this new video thing that's taken up on YouTube. It's kind of like the sounds of things.
Right, the sound.
Yeah, all of that.
I almost did a video. I almost read a story like that for my students to see if that would gain more views or get a different audience. And once upon a time,
this exactly. I've looked at the microphone, but it's so weird. And like when my husband saw it, it's like, what the heck are you watching? This is like bizarre, kind of strange. But I'm not like massively into it. It's just sometimes if I can't switch my brain off before bed, I'll just watch you of them. And I like TikTok. And as I was thinking of TikTok, it's very ASMR with like the soft sound of it. It just reminded me of that ASMR. Yeah, cringy.
Okay, that's interesting. I've watched a few too, and I think, how many subscribers?
It is insane.
Incredible, incredible.
I mean, you just have to eat a chocolate bar down a microphone, and yeah. Bizarre.
What's your favorite minced oath?
I think it's very British, and I say, oh my goodness, a lot. Which is really like, oh my gosh, oh my goodness. Yeah, I think it's just a typical, and my daughter now has picked up on it. It's really sweet to hear her say like, oh
I use oh my gosh. I think that's a good one, and
yeah, so that's a good one too. I haven't actually ever taught minced oaths, and when I was looking at the questions, I thought that's a really good one to teach. So I might steal this question from our teaching this week.
Now, the next question is, what profession other than being a teacher would you like to do?
I would love to do something with nature. So either like a travel presenter on TV. That is like, the dream job of being able to go to different locations, and because I really enjoy presenting and talking, obviously. Or a bit more realistic would be a mountain guide leader, that kind of thing. So again, presenting and working with people and nature.
Yeah, I'd love to do a travel show or a travel vlog. I think those would be kind of fun to do.
Yeah, definitely. It's just, again, it's people can learn English through it, but it's very interesting, as well.
What's one profession that you would not like to attempt?
I'm not, I dislike things to do with numbers. So banking, accounting, I just don't have, that side of my brain doesn't fire up so well. The creative side. So yeah, that would be my worst nightmare, would be being an accountant.
And if you could talk to anyone, living or dead, who would that be, and what would you ask them?
I was actually really thinking about this, and in the end, the only thing I came up with was like, I would say to God, and what is tell me exactly what I should do, which I'm sure that God would not give me the whole plan of life, but yeah, I don't think I could think of.
Okay. And I have some people coming in, so if there's a little background noise, it's just my family coming in from being out. It's raining here now. So.
Oh, really? It's actually really beautiful and sunny here.
It's been really nice, but it's now raining, so they came home early. So if you hear some noise,
no, I actually can't hear anything at the moment, but
What's the best piece of advice you give your students?
It was to do with motivation, I think. Motivation of, I think, to really understand why do you want to learn English? Sounds really obvious, but I think when you get to the core reason, and even with young students, I think you can ask this, and why do we do the things we do is really important motivator. And I think some of my students, they just say the first thing that comes to their head, they need to pass a test, or they, with younger students, their parents told them they have to learn or whatever. But I think if you go deeper and at the core of it, is it that you want to provide more for your family? Is it that you want to have self-improvements or learn a new cultural aspects of the language? And I think once they hit on that fundamental motivation, if they write it down or put it somewhere they can see or think about it often, then that's really good motivator for the daily slog of learning English. Yeah. Or fed up of you,
I find that I change my method depending on the reason they're learning English. So if they're learning English to pass an exam, like maybe a FCE exam or one of those Cambridge exams, then it's more focused, more structured than if they're doing more of a conversational lesson. Then it's more open.
It definitely depends. I think that's the key to being a good teacher, that you are very adaptable depending on what their expectations are, their motivations, and also personalities. It's like there's a few students that are like quite straight-laced businessmen, and I'm quite different to the way I would be with those that are a bit more bubbly and personable. So yeah, but that's it. You are like a chameleon, aren't you, as a teacher?
Yeah, a little bit. I always say, if this teaching job doesn't work, I'm going to become a comedian.
Yeah, definitely.
I think that teaching gives you a chance to not only meet people from different countries, but a chance to learn about their language and their habits of learning. Because students learn in different ways. Some students prefer learning through reading books, for example, or playing online games. So it's interesting to have all of these different ways of teaching just one language.
Yeah, definitely. I think that's the reason why I fell in love with English in the first place, is that it's so multifaceted. At the same time, I also feel like when I used to teach subjects, the progress was really slow, because you could be teaching maths for a whole year and you look in and think, I don't see a lot of improvement. But with English, you can feel that each lesson you've contributed something. It's like, wow, I actually met the objective for this lesson. So
pat yourself on the back. Good job.
Yeah, you feel a bit like, and you're opening doors of possibility to people. That's that they may never have without you teaching the language. So yeah.
Well, speaking of students, we have 2 viewers that are here watching us live, and I wanted to give them a shout out and say hello. If you have any questions, you can always post them in the comment section below. We're happy to answer your questions as well. On occasion, we do have students that stop by, and teachers as well. And I always welcome you to, ask questions and, participate. So thanks for being here. Well, that's about it for today. But before I go, I wanted to ask you if you're taking new students at this time.
Yeah, at the moment, for the next month, I'm kind of full capacity in terms of my life-work balance. But from this, we have 6-week summer holidays in England, and they start kind of end of July, August. So from August, I would be accepting adult students, and it's advanced level basically. So yeah.
Okay, so to contact you, I've posted all of your information or your details in the description box below. So any students want to take lessons with you, they can contact you through your email address or Facebook, or what was the other thing you gave me? I forgot.
I had a YouTube, but I guess you can't really contact me through that. But yeah, email and Facebook is.
And share your YouTube channel.
My YouTube channel is Natural English with Sarah.
So go check out her website as well, and learn more about English and listen to a British accent instead of my American one. Is there any last words you want to say?
I just think that these interviews are really great. I was saying to you before we came on that I really enjoy listening to previous ones, and I think for students and teachers alike, it's really good to hear how other people do things. So thank you very much, Ellie. That was great.
Well, thank you for doing this. And if you are a teacher with at least 5 years experience or more and would like to be interviewed, you can contact me at askellie@englishfunzone.com. Thank you so much for watching this live stream. And until next time, my students, please keep practicing. And thanks again, Sarah, for being here today. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.